So I'm Jim McQuillan. Tonight, together with Will Fuqua, we're talking about LaTeX, a document preparation system, as it says. How many of you guys use LaTeX? Anybody?
I have.
Two tentatives.
Oh, this should be good. This should be good. Nobody will know if I'm full of crap or not. I like this kind of presentation. Sometimes I give presentations that the audience knows more than I do about it. We'll see, that might happen tonight. Okay, so the pronunciation. One of you guys was asking about it earlier. It's not LaTeX.
Sure it is.
Right? Right? No. It's either LaTeX or LaTeX. Both of those are suitable names or pronunciations for it.
Sounds like a cake. It's like a cake, so
It's tech like in technical. Okay?
That's like in kite.
Like in Kai, yes. Okay. You can't talk about LaTeX without talking a little bit about tech. Tech is a typesetting language invented or created by Donald E. Knuth, the guy that gave us the art of computer programming and a lot of other great works. Back in 1978, he created this thing called tech because he had written the art of computer programming, and when it came time to doing a second edition of the book, he found that all of his original source material, actually his source material was actually laid out in a typesetting machine, and that machine didn't exist or wasn't available, so they had to typeset it all again, and he thought that was just ridiculous. Why don't we use computers to typeset these things? And he was not happy with the typesetting tools that he found, so he decided to create his own. And what he created is quite amazing. So it was first released in 1978. The current version is, some of you may recognize that number. It's, put on your pattern recognition hat, you'll see that basically is pi, or part of. It's an approximation of pi, right? Tech is in the public domain. The only rule that he really has for it is if you modify it, you can't call it tech. Actually, if you modify it in an incompatible way, you can't call it tech. He doesn't want any modifications to actually retain the same file names. You can use it all you want for any purpose you want, but he doesn't want it modified. He doesn't want the official tech modified because he's very, very concerned about it running on future computers forever and ever. In fact, you notice my note there about it uses only fixed point arithmetic. Why do you suppose he would do that? Use fixed point arithmetic.
It's typesetting language.
Accuracy.
For accuracy, yeah. As you port this thing to different architectures, and floating point arithmetic is going to give you different answers many different times, right? It's there are standards for floating point, but he purposely made it fixed point arithmetic so that every computer out there would come out with the same answer, or every CPU architecture would come out with the same answer when you start doing arithmetic with the values in the language. And there's a lot of arithmetic that takes place internally to figure out how to proportionally space your characters on the page. And it's very important to him to make sure that any work that you do, anything you write in tech, will continue to be renderable far into the future. I know this is something that Dave has talked about a few times, the fact that data we're creating today may not be readable in the not too distant future, right? How many people have WordStar files with documents in them? Probably not many of you guys. Well, you do, but look at any law office. They've all got their stuff in WordStar, or now WordPerfect, yeah. Can you still read WordPerfect? You probably
You can still buy it.
Some of those early word processing machines, Spring Deck and Wang.
And those guys.
I don't know what you did with that stuff.
Yeah,
Well, this,
have an 8-inch floppy.
I think Knuth had the foresight to realize that's important stuff there, right? He's laying out what could be one of the best one of the best books in computers, he wants to make sure that years from now, people will still be able to render it and read it. So that's why he spent so much time on making sure of that. Everything he wrote was that way. So I mentioned the version number. The design was frozen at version 3.0. I thought I had another slide, but every time he comes out every time he releases a new version, he just adds one more digit onto the version number,
Okay.
approaching pi.
Well, how did it get
Right.
3.0 though?
Well, it started at 3. Well, let's say it started at 3.
Okay.
When he came up with the first bug fix, it was 3.1, and then 3.15, 3.14, and 1.5, and 2.6, not right, and it goes on and on. They froze the design in '78. I think that's when they froze it, or whenever they came. No, '78 they created it. I think in '84 or so they froze the design at version 3, and Knuth himself has mentioned that there might be new features that would be nice to put into it, but he values the fact that he wants to make sure it always produces the same output no matter what. He finds that more important than any new features you could think of. So here's what he says about that. At the time of my death, it is my intention that the then current version of TeX and Metafont be forever left unchanged, except that the final version numbers to be recorded in the banner lines of programs should become TeX version, and this is the TeX way of printing pi. Okay, it goes into math mode /pi, and Metafont uses the constant e. How many of you guys know what the constant e is?
Natural log.
It's a base logarithmic thing. I was a math major in college, but it's so long ago I barely remember. It was 2.72 something. It's a non-repeating, non-terminating.
2.7182.
Yeah. Okay. Well, at that point, those when he's still alive, but when he dies, his instructions are to change the version numbers to be that. They will never be changed again, and all bugs will be considered permanent features.
That was in 90.
I'm sorry?
1990.
Yeah, that was in 1990 that he said that. So that's I don't know, do the math. Was it 23 years? Almost 24 years? A little over 23 years ago. He's still kicking around. I don't know how active he is, but you saw the version. The current version is there's been some bug fixes released in the last 23 years. So anyhow. On to LaTeX. That's what you guys are here for, right? LaTeX was created by Leslie Lamport, first released in 1985. The current version is 2E. I mentioned that TeX is public domain, but this is using the LaTeX project public license, which is it's free software compatible license, but it's not GPL compatible. The Free Software Foundation did approve the license as a free software license, so that's good. They had to make a few changes from the public domain, sort of strange public domain license that TeX used, and that was mostly to satisfy the Debian project, because Debian refused to include LaTeX in their distribution because of the stipulation that you can't modify the files and keep the same file names. So the LPPL allows them to make changes to files in the LaTeX package as long as you make it known within the comments in the file that you are changing it. It's different from the standard. And it's written in TeX. It's really just macros on top of TeX. So that's why we talk about TeX. Okay, so to install it, if you're a Debian or Ubuntu type, those are the packages that you would want. The TeX Live is a distribution of LaTeX. It's the macros including all kinds of packages. And I think Will's going to talk a little more about some of the packages. I cover a few of the packages, and I'll show some of them. But TeX is sort of LaTeX is sort of a core set of features to help you lay out a page. It's easier to use than tech. They've created a bunch of macros to make things easier. And then there's a bunch of add-on packages. Tech Live is that distribution of LaTeX plus the add-on packages. So install those packages on your system if you want to play. You'd be surprised how much you get when you do that. There's so much functionality in those 3 packages. Structure of a LaTeX document. You start off with a document class. The really important things are the document class, the begin document, and the end document. In the top half is the preamble. That's where you put instructions like loading other packages, defining your page, setting some defaults. In the bottom half, that's where the body of your document resides. I've only got a
Hang on
couple
a
of
second.
Yeah.
Your slide says preamble and the sheet says preamble.
Pretend it's a B. It just got rendered wrong.
Okay.
Different font.
Google Docs. Let's blame Google Docs. Thanks for pointing that out. In LaTeX, you've basically got three modes that you're in. There's the standard default paragraph mode. That's where you just type text, or you just have free-flowing text that gets rendered as paragraphs in your document. You have an LR mode that's sort of like paragraph mode, but it doesn't do line breaks. And LR mode is really for small things, like you might have a phrase that you don't want broken. Like if you write out a long sentence, LaTeX will wrap that long sentence for you, but it might break the words at a weird place, right? Like I might have a thing that says the current version of LaTeX is version 3, 3.14. Right? You wouldn't really want to split version in 3. You wouldn't want version to be on one line and 3 to be on the next line. So you can wrap it in a construct like an M box, and it'll keep those words together. When you wrap that in an M box, you're in LR mode. You don't really need to think too much about LR mode. It just sort of happens for you. And then there's math mode for doing equations. And I'll show you how some of those work. In LaTeX, within your document, you have, in the syntax, you have environments, commands, and then here's an example of math mode. But environments are things that you start something like, I want to center everything from now on. So you do a begin center. And then the end center is where you end the center. It's kind of like in HTML, the center tag, which is kind of deprecated now in favor of CSS. But you start it and you end it. So everything in between those two tags is going to be centered.
I didn't think center was ever part of the W3 spec. I think that was up in Netscape.
A lot of people used it. All the browsers supported it. But yeah. Anyway, so environments are things that you start and finish, and everything in between the start and finish pays attention to that environment. Other environments could be tables, lists. There's just a never-ending list of those environments. Commands are just, as I say, it's a command. You want to underline some text, you do /underline, and then in between the curly braces, you put your text. You want to you want to insert some space between paragraphs. It's V space, 1.5 centimeters. That'll give you 1.5 centimeters between your two paragraphs. Okay, and then math mode. There's a couple of different ways to enter math mode. Here I'm showing a $sign here and the $sign here. Everything inside of that is in math mode. The \parenthesis, it's the equivalent to the $signs. And then there's another, I think, begin math mode and end math mode, or it might not be called math mode, or something. Begin math, I forget, but this is what I've used.
Question.
Yes?
On the V space, is that based off of the bottom of the font or the baseline of the font?
I think it's the bottom of the top paragraph and the top of the next paragraph. That'll give you 1.5 centimeters of white space. Okay.
I'm looking at the centers and how that would work.
So processing, you create your LaTeX file, and you need to compile it, basically. You want to turn it into something, right? So you can use the LaTeX command. That'll produce a DVI file, which is a device independent format. Or you can use the PDF LaTeX command. You can get to a PDF using either one of those. From a DVI, you can use DVI PDF or DVI PS to spit out either a PDF or PostScript. For years, I've been using the top method to spit out a DVI file, and then I run that through DVI PDF. Mostly because the old system that I'm using is a version of Linux from 2003. That's I've got a very critical server installed at a customer site that's Red Hat Enterprise Linux 3. That's the version of LaTeX that it's got. It didn't have PDF LaTeX on it. So I use the LaTeX command followed by DVI PDF. When you run either one of those commands, they spit a ton of stuff out onto standard out. You'll see when we get into that. Anybody watch or catch XKCD yesterday? Did you catch that, Will?
I did. I had it in my presentation too.
Oh, good. Good. So that's maybe the only conflict we have. Trustworthiness of information by file extension. Tech files have .tex as their suffix. File extension, sort of by convention. I don't think anything requires it to be .tex, but anyway. So the guy from XKCD considers anything with .tex to be fairly reliable information, all the way down to anything with .gif as the suffix to be probably not reliable at all, negative reliable.
Why is .jpeg less reliable than .jpg?
I think
Windows.
You know, they approximate the numbers for the colors, and every time you say that you lose.
But what's the difference between .jpg and .jpeg?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think maybe it's the more knowledgeable people would use JPG, and others would use that. I don't know. Just guessing. But that was sort of timely. That was yesterday's XKCD. I thought that was pretty good. And there's with XKCD, if you hover over the comic, there's the title text, the alt text that pops up, and it was something like, I don't think I've ever been lied to by information entered in a text file that was organized by hand or aligned by hand. I thought that was pretty good. That's the last slide, I think, so we'll get into the real nuts and bolts of it. I've got some books. These are not part of the giveaway. So these are books that I use all the time. The original tech book from Donald Knuth, this is the second edition, I think. When I sit down and I start to try to figure out why my document's not coming out the way I want it to, I need all four of these books plus the web to figure it out. This is an excellent book. These are all still available on Amazon, by the way, but they are quite dated. On the cheat sheet, I think on the last page, I list these books and I show the dates. Most of them are like 1994. Excellent books, though. If you want to take a look at them, they're free. Yeah, let's start from the 90s. That's only 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of them was 2004.
One of them was updated 2004. That's not the one I have.
Okay.
I've got the original. But there's some excellent websites out there, too, for LaTeX. So that's the slides. Now let's get into the fun stuff. I'll have you know that handout. Everybody get a copy of the handout? I laid that out with LaTeX. You know, I for a long time I've had a document in a wiki in my server in my office, and that's how I've kept track of all my LaTeX stuff, and I was gonna just print off copies of that. I thought, well, that's kinda silly, because this is a talk about LaTeX, let's do something with it. Anyway, so. Let's see, we can, let's go look at the cheat sheet first if you're loading. This is probably more than you guys wanna see right now. I'll make all this stuff available, I can put a tar file. Craig, what do we have on the MUG website now for hosting tar walls and stuff? Do we have a way of doing that?
It's called WordPress.
WordPress, okay.
Yeah, you probably upload it to the server, right, and just have a link.
Okay, we'll figure out how to do that for these files that I've got here. Anyway, this is the file that you guys are all looking at in the printout there. But let's have some fun, I guess, with creating some documents. So let's. So remember what I said, it has to start with a document class. And there's several document classes. There's letter and article, and I think you're gonna show Beamer, and there's slides. There's a couple others too. You can write your own classes. But letter is what I use. Then we have to do begin documents. And if I just do that and I say like hello world, all right, there's my document right there, not much to it. So let's go ahead and run it. Even that spits out tons of stuff. Right? And it spits out a couple of files too, but it created my PDF file, right? So we'll go take a look at what that looks like. Exciting, isn't it? Hello world. So let's make that bigger.
Yeah.
We can do huge. So that'll make that text huge now. Go ahead and compile it. Much bigger now, right?
How is huge defined? What's,
There's a bunch of built-in things before that. I can set font sizes to really pretty much whatever I want. Font size, and this is where you specify the point size of the font. So let's say 24. And you also have to say the size of the line. So that'd be from one line to the next. So maybe 26. So it'd be 24 points is the height of the font. 26 is from one line to the next. And then I have to do a select font. That'll enable that font. So now let's just do that. Okay. And read it. Okay. I think that's bigger than the huge, wasn't it?
Look about seconds.
Well, let's go way big then. Still looks the same.
we see 2 lines?
Is that
Have
compiled?
you got a fit the printer on a display?
I'm sorry?
Have you got something like fit the window on that display?
Yeah, but that was, the percentage looked the same each time.
Yeah, it did. It could be that the font that it's using has a maximum. I think it'll probably is saying that in the standard out.
Or do you need brackets around hello world?
No, you don't.
Try 72, 74, just as the last
Yeah, we'll try
shot.
that. And then we'll pay attention to.
How does it know what font?
There's built-in fonts. Yeah, see, it's telling me 72 is not available.
Oh, okay.
So it's size 24 is what was substituted. That's the highest it can go.
Jim, what fonts does it use?
It's got, just a second here. Yeah, you can see it's taking the second parameter, it's putting the lines that far apart. But
Bigger
it's,
than one single line.
it's not using, the highest font it can go is 48.88. There's a ton of fonts available for, that LaTeX has. And, it can't use TrueType if you tell it to. There's, you have to configure it for that. I think if I load a different font family, let's see. I can try a different font family like CMR is a computer machine font, I think.
Is machine readable?
It's still. Yeah, just select that. Let's try that. Yeah, it's still stopping at 24. We do have another document here that shows some more font stuff. This is just using, you know, I showed you the example of the using huge. This is an example showing you some of the built-in font names from tiny all the way up to huge with a capital H. Again, it's not getting all that big because the font that I've selected, that's the huge with a capital H. You can see from the smallest all the way down to the biggest. But then on the second page, it renders this. So you can, from the different fonts that, from the fonts that it's got loaded by default, I can choose, there's a Roman font face, that would be the top one. The serif, that's the sans serif. And the second one, the TT, that's a typewriter font, Courier. And then the IT for italics, SL for slant, which is an awful lot like italics.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. SC, which is small caps. Even though I fed it a lowercase string, it converted it to all uppercase, but it's small. And then the bold font, and MD, that's a medium font. So we can get into a little bit of the fonts more with, let's see. There's, if you look at the last page of the handout, there's a couple of links on there for resources on the web. On the back, yeah. Some of those are really good, but probably the best site that I've come across is Wikibooks. Wikibooks, it's basically it's a wiki books, and the one for the wiki book for LaTeX is just fantastic. It's got a ton of stuff. Really nice table of contents, but we'll get into the fonts. See if we can figure out how to switch to a more reasonable font. There's the standard things like turning on bold, emphasizing text. Emphasizing is, I think by default, italics. Font styles, that's kind of what I did on that last page that I was showing you. Will, do you do any font stuff in your presentation?
A little bit, mainly via XC tech, Litec.
Okay. Here's, this is the definitions of the sizes. I used letter was my document class, and 10 point is the default, so this is the sizes of those fonts from, for the 10-point font, it's from 6.0 all the way up to 22.82.
How was it with international characters?
Sorry?
International characters.
I think it supports
the Frenchies and the.
Yeah, there's a syntax for getting the umlauts and accents and all that stuff on your international characters. Let's try one of these. And TLC is. Let's try. Shapes are not available.
It's undefined, it says.
TTLC.
Yeah. Just gonna use the same thing. Yeah, that's exactly what we're getting. Maximum size 24.88. Let's see if we can load more sizable font. Let's try that.
Let's change the font size down to something, or are you trying to get it better?
Let's see if that gives us one point. Warnings ahead of time.
There you go.
How's that? You notice there's an awful lot of margin around the top and left and right.
Yeah.
That's the default margin. If you want to change that.
Well, I thought it was center.
No, it's just a huge margin. LaTeX is great if you want to do like a book where you need even odd pages and you want more margin on the side that gets bound. It'll handle all that. You just say 2-page is one of the options in the document class. But let's go plug in what we need to change the margins. Let's see. I'll just go steal the code out of the cheat sheet. So here, I'm using, LaTeX has got these packages to do just about everything. So I need to load a package, geometry package, in order to be able to define things more. So like here I'm saying letter paper, landscape, let's go back, we'll do portrait. And then here's where I set my margins, my top, bottom, left, right. And there's like 3 different ways to set margins in LaTeX. So you see I set my margins to 1/4 inch. And you can see there's just a very small margin at the top and at the left. Everything's left justified. LaTeX is great for things like multi-column.
So this is an alternative to using straight PostScript to define.
Well, the issue with using PostScript is as I was explaining to some of the guys last week at the board meeting, PostScript is sort of like programming an assembler, where LaTeX would be using a higher level language like a Perl or Python or something. PostScript gives you the real primitives for doing things on the printer. You can plot lines and lay out text on the page, but LaTeX helps you position all that stuff. It helps you, do things like paragraph wrapping, stuff like that. PostScript has some of that stuff.
But it's a pain to work.
So you use LaTeX to create your PostScript file, and then you
Yeah.
edit your PostScript file
Yeah.
to fine tune that.
I've done a lot of stuff with raw PostScript. It's a chore.
Takes a while.
Yeah, it's a real chore to get it right.
Is this easy to draw boxes, like for drawing a form?
Yeah, there's commands for surrounding your text with a box, you put a border. I mean, everything's surrounded by a box, so you can turn the border on if you wanna see
Like
it.
HTML?
So it looks like, yeah.
You
So
got
it's just-
lines on this.
Yeah, I saw the dividing line.
So the output, the PostScript output of this is the text PostScript, or was it putting out a?
This is spitting out a PDF.
But there
But
was
you had
an-
one that did an intermediate one.
Good deal.
Oh, if I run LaTeX
DVI.
against the file, it spits out a DVI file.
Oh, okay.
Right, you see that, it's surprisingly small. Then I don't know if I have that installed on here, XDVI. Yeah, I did. So you can use XDVI to display it, so XDVI, ex1.dvi. It's fast, it comes up fast, but it's really, it's like a motif application from 1986.
That's not
Let's
motif,
say-
man. That's excellent.
Excellent, yeah.
Motifless.
It's not even
Big
motif.
improvement
yeah.
on that.
Those DOS utilities you used to install.
For viewing PostScript files, I use Ghost View a lot, GB, and that's a lot like this.
Yeah.
But you can take that file then, DVI, PS, ex1.dvi, and that just spit out a PostScript file. So now I got it for you PostScript lovers. PostScript.
Except there's also DVI and PDF.
Look at this thing, you saw how much I was, there is a DVI and PDF. I'm printing 2 lines of text, setting a font and changing some margins. Look at all those.
Looks encrypted.
It's amazing. But if you view it, it's PostScript. If you view GV, it's. I find PDF to be so much better to work with. I still don't know, how do you display a PostScript file on a Windows machine?
Go sprint or to PDF.
Yeah, yeah. And then you.
Sure, what? There's no Ghost View for Windows?
I'm sure you could install it.
I'm sure there is somewhere.
I've got it on
Because
a
I
bunch
think
of
it-
mine.
It's so much easier to work with PDFs.
I
Yeah,
think
oh, I
I
agree.
installed it when I installed Vim on Windows before. I don't use Windows anymore, so.
So I'm gonna go steal something else out of my my cheat sheet. It's great for multi-column. I gotta load the multi-col package, then I can, in my document, I can set, I can set, let's see. So I can see it. I'm not used to working at 1024 by 768. So in my document now, I'm gonna get rid of this silly font. It's too big. In fact, I'm gonna go smaller. Let me see what let's see.
You'll make it hard on the lines.
Let's see what we can. Multi-cols. I should spell it. So that's not very exciting with just that little bit of text. Not terribly exciting, right? Just split it into 2 columns. Well, it's really fun. Is if you have a lot of data to print. There's some good stuff.
Spanish.
I told it I want 3 columns, and that's exactly what it gave me. In fact, three pages.
So was that just one continuous line?
The text?
Yeah.
The ipsum lorem stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very long lines.
Yeah.
I've got wrapping turned off in my editor. Yeah. Yeah, in fact, if I turn wrapping back on, so. Yeah, so it's just a bunch of long lines of stuff, right? I broke it into paragraphs.
Mhm.
There's a website, if you just Google for ipsum lorem, you can tell it how much of this stuff you want, and it'll give you 50,000 lines if you want.
Oh, jump.
Yeah, it's nonsense, but it's very handy for, doing things like this. Neat thing about multi-cols, you see, let's see if we, the last page. Multi-column package tries to, it's got my last little bit at the end there, the hello world thing. It tries to keep the columns even, so on the last page, it tries to keep things balanced. Right. Which is nice if you're trying to lay something out like that. But you can also, some of the syntax doesn't make a lot of sense. If I include the asterisk on the multi-cols environment, that tells it don't do that. It just lumped everything in the first column. Once it fills up the first column, it'll start filling the second column. So, that's, I've got a little more to show yet, but anything else you guys want to see in just laying out a tech file? There's so much information on the internet. What I'm hoping to do is just sort of give you a taste of what's out there.
One quick question.
Yeah.
The use package, is that only for predefined packages, or can you like write your own package?
You can write your own package, you can install packages. There's a site out there called CTAN. It's the Comprehensive Tech Archive Network.
So it's this fancy.
No, it's like CPAN, Perl's Comprehensive Perl Archive. There's a ton of packages out there. CTAN.org.
Comprehensive Tech Archive Network.
Yeah, there's a Tech Archive Network.
What are the packages written in, like what, they have code in them?
They're macros. They're all written in TAC.
Okay.
I don't think there's any like C code or anything like that. I think it's all tech macros, and they get really it's like regular assembly. So you can grab packages from here. You can write your own packages. List of packages, just give you a clue. See all the things that start with H.
Well, that's the other thing I wonder is in real life, do you very often go out and find packages, or like are there a set that you get?
The packages, I showed you the instructions for installing LaTeX on your system.
Yeah.
The Tech Live Extra includes pretty much everything you could need. I've not had to install any other packages myself. It includes everything I need. I should tell you what I use this for. My day job is I write a practice management system for doctors' offices. My biggest customer is a mammography center in Rochester, New York. They're huge. They see about 400. I think they're up to about 470 patients a day now. And every one of those patients needs to get a report from the radiologist that their mammogram is okay. You hope it's okay, right? So in 70% of those patients are just in for a screening mammogram, and most all of those walk away with an all okay result. And my system produces those letters for the all okays. If there's a positive, if there's indication of breast cancer or a lump or something, then the patient goes on for further testing. But for those 70% that come in just for the screening and that walk away okay, my system spits out a personalized letter for that patient with the results from the doctor. And we use LaTeX to produce that letter. We don't use LaTeX to lay out the letterhead. We actually we use LaTeX to spit out a PDF, and then we kind of layer that PDF on top of the PDF of the letterhead, and that's what prints out for the patient. But I can't show you any of that stuff because of patient confidentiality stuff. But we use LaTeX completely for that. We pull data out of the database and pull the user creates these tech templates. And it seems kind of weird a user could actually lay out tech, but I give them the basics, and then they can play with the text any way they want. But it's pretty nice. It kind of pulls all the data together and spits out a tech file, and then runs that through the LaTeX command and then into through DBI PDF into a PDF. And I do all that without, I didn't need to load any extra packages. In fact, that's a system, like I said, that's a Red Hat Enterprise 3 system that's actually doing that document processing. So that version of LaTeX is from 10 years ago, and it really hasn't changed. Some of the tools have changed. There's a PDF LaTeX command now, but the basic text processing hasn't changed at all. So that was some of the packages.
While you're there,
Yeah.
DVI to, what kind of things can you do with a DVI file?
Well, you can display it as I showed with XDVI. DVI has a bunch of filters or commands to turn it into something else. I can turn it into a fax or a book or I don't know what else. Pretty much all I ever use is DVI PDF and DVI PS.
DVI files. Okay. No, I'm going back in my ancient memory, and I remember the printers were all so much different that you buy a printer and you'd get something to turn DVIs into that printer.
The drivers. There were drivers for the printers for DVIs.
So DVI is a published format as opposed to
Standard thing, but I'm not sure how standard it is.
Okay.
It might be standard in the typesetting world, but really, I focus on PDFs and PostScripts.
Sure.
And that's what works well for me. So the next thing I wanted to show is more of a little bit of the processing stuff that I do. I created this little merge program. First, let me show you the data file. My stuff all comes, I suck it out of a Postgres database. I take the I even store the templates in the Postgres database, and then when I produce the PDF, I store that in a Postgres database. But I don't have the database here, but I created a little input file. It's a CSV file. It's a typical CSV. I've got the. You see that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. The first line is the names of the columns. The second and third line are my rows of data. Right? Nothing exciting there. But I created a little Perl script that'll basically suck in that CSV file. I use Template Toolkit as a template tool, basically. Suck in the CSV. I open up an output file, which is going to be the letter followed by a letter number, the word letter followed by a number followed by THs. I run the Template Toolkit processing on it, and I spit out my text file, and then I run it through PDF LaTeX. My template is a very simple template. There's my template, right? I got my document class stuff. I use a different way of setting my margins using the vmargin package. Also, there's a couple of things in here that I just stole out of my customers' templates. There's an if-then else, or an if-then package for doing conditions inside your LaTeX. I set my paper size. This is one of the ways to set margins. So then I get into my document, right? Dear first name, last name, comma, thank you for visiting the office on date of service, billing department. So if I run that, just run my little purge thing, or my merge thing, and it spits out all that wonderful stuff. I end up with, first of all, created a bunch of text files, right? There's the first one with James Smith. That's the first patient. Came in on December 7th. And there's that one. Mary Jones came in on November 22nd. But it also produced PDFs. So this is how you could do a mail merge type of a thing. If you needed, if you found yourself having to take data out of a database and merge it with a template, you could spit out letters or any kind of document that you want to write, doing something simple like that. Whether you're using Perl or Python or whatever your favorite language is, I'm sure there's a template package for that. Not terribly exciting, but could be useful. The documents that I prepare in my system, much more involved than that.
So there are libraries for writing, writing LaTeX, or do you pretty much just write? Are there libraries? Do people use libraries, or people pretty much render it themselves? I'm just curious.
I don't know.
You mean writing actual, like LaTeX?
Yeah, like a template.
Yeah,
like
there's like
template
a
versus-
markdown to LaTeX,
Okay.
like converters and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you have a question?
My question, just when I run in the past, there are a couple templates available, like I think you produce your resume, some other
Yeah.
things at one time, and there was many templates, but not like a library per se.
Yeah, and if you give a talk at some technical conferences, they'll give you a layout to use. You just it's a template or a shell of a document that you just fill in all the content of your thing. So if you have to do a paper for a conference, it's been a long time since I did a talk at a conference that needed that kind of a thing. Early on, back in the early 2000s, I was doing some talks where I had to give like a of time I used, at least one of them I used LaTeX for. So I think I probably need to give Will some time to show his awesomeness. He's got some really pretty cool things to say. Yeah.
Quick question first. You said before you somehow like merged two PDF
Yes.
files. What did you use to do that?
That I'm using Perl. There's a library for Perl called PDF Reuse that allows me to pull in a Perl document, a PDF document, and treat it as a background. And then, so letterhead is great. It's a background, right? So from there, I can lay things on top of it. So then I pull in I can pull pages out of another PDF and lay them on top. Or I can create my own text and put it on top. And I do that sometimes if I have to produce. In mammography, it's not uncommon for a patient to have several doctors when they go in for their exam. They'll have several referring doctors that they want, they might have a surgeon, they might have a primary care physician. And we need to produce letters for each of those doctors. And those letters always have the primary care physician as the name in the top of the letter, but down at the bottom it'll have a list of the doctors that are also should get a copy of it. And then for all those that should get a copy, when we print their copy, it says copy on it. And I do that using PDF Reuse. I pull in the document, I put it on letterhead, and I either put copy on the bottom or nothing on the bottom. All using Perl. And I imagine similar tools exist for PHP and Python and whatever other language you might want to use. So, more questions? Anybody? You all ready to run out and start using this now instead of Google Docs?
Not till we explain the math package.
Well, you were going to show us the math stuff, weren't you?
The math?
Yeah.
I'm actually not showing math.
Let's do one of those then. Let's do, yeah. Let's get rid of all this stuff we don't need.
I always thought that's why he wrote it, because he could actually write an equation with it.
I have some formulas over here. So, just steal these. That should do it. Multi-columns. So, okay. Let's go bigger on the font too. Go to 24.
4.88.
That's a couple of. Let's do this. Let's see if I can do this while I can show them on the same screen. Let's do this. If you want to do source code listings, you got to use a package called listings, and there's a couple of ways to do that too. I'm bringing these in so we can see them on the screen at the same time. But I don't want them to be up in front. Those are pretty simple. So those are the three, up in the top left corner, that's how I wrote them in LaTeX, and then this is how they were rendered. All right, you've got the quadratic equation, anybody recognize the middle one? Yeah, and the bottom one?
Volume of the sphere.
Volume of the sphere, yeah.
What are the dollars that are in front of the
There's a couple of ways to get into, you mean on,
Yeah, like 2 and 3.
up here?
Yeah.
There's a couple of different ways to get into math mode, if you want to start rendering math equations. One of them is with a backslash parenthesis. You see x equals backslash parenthesis, then it ends with backslash right parenthesis. The other way is just bracket it with dollar signs. Okay. So, you know, some of it is really pretty simple. A raised to the second power plus b raised to the second power equals c raised to the second power. That's a real nice one. Let's see, v equals fraction 4 over 3. And then times pi times r the third. And that's what you end up with right there. If you have a situation where you have to show a lot of formulas, LaTeX is fantastic for that. Right? Slash pi, if you want to display the pi symbol, that's pretty simple stuff. So that's the, who was asking about math? Somebody? Me. So there you go, there's some math.
That was the only reason I was ever interested in that back when I was in class, so I could actually type up a formula.
Yeah, yeah, try that in anything else.
Well, now they've got a math package and, you know, it's popular, but 30 years ago, that was the only way to do it.
How do you lay that out in HTML? That'd be ugly.
Yeah, there's like MathML, there's actually, you can use LaTeX syntax, I think.
Is there?
Plugin, like how Wikipedia does, I think.
Okay. Because the Wikibooks has a lot of these equations in it, and they lay it out quite nicely. That's all HTML. So anyway, I think I should probably get off the stage now to give Will a chance to show what he's got. Thank you. Start using it. It's cool stuff, and I've been doing it for about 10 years. You know, I don't get in, like, you know, we have a little trouble with fonts. I don't switch fonts. I just use the standard font.